Welcome to the Margaret McLean Show. I'm a former prosecutor and your courtroom translator. Tonight, I'll be discussing a very controversial case with prominent Los Angeles defense attorney Silva Megerditchian. And this one is so tragic. A 14-year-old boy is dead. His name is Cyrus Carmack-Belton. A convenience store owner named Rick Chow chased the boy from his store because he thought Cyrus had just stolen some water. Chow and his son chased him across a parking lot about the length of a football field and shot Cyrus in the back and killed him. After hearing all the evidence, a jury deliberated for roughly 8 hours and returned a unanimous verdict of not guilty. Not guilty. Tonight, we're going to talk about one of the most emotionally charged cases to reach a jury in recent years. And this case has sparked outrage across South Carolina and far beyond. For many people, the facts seem straightforward. Surveillance videos showed that Cyrus did not steal the water bottles he was accused of taking. Witnesses described a teenager running from a convenience store, appearing frightened and desperate to escape. So it's a big chase. For the victim's family, and my heart really goes out to the victim's family and the victim. I wish this had never happened. Members of the community, the verdict feels impossible to reconcile with those facts. And when I first saw it this week, I was absolutely shocked. I hadn't followed the case, but now I wish I had, but now I've gone back through the case. And when I first saw it, I said, this can't be. Why? How does a case that appears so compelling for the prosecution end in a complete acquittal, a not guilty? But remember, jurors don't decide cases based on public outrage. They decide cases based on evidence, witness credibility, the judge's instructions on the law, and whether the prosecutors have proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. We'll be discussing how the defense focused the jury on a very different moment. Their case rested largely on what happened during the final seconds of that chase. Rick Chow's son testified that Cyrus, the teenage boy, possessed a handgun and pointed it right at him. The defense argued that whatever mistakes may have been made before that moment, like the chase, the water bottle, the shooting itself was a lawful act of self-defense or defense of another. Under that theory, the question was not whether the chase should have happened. The question was whether Chow reasonably believed his son faced an imminent threat of death or serious bodily harm when he fired that shot that killed Cyrus. Those are two very different themes. One focuses on a mistaken accusation, a pursuit, and a teenager who ended up dead, tragically dead over a bottle of water. The other theme focuses on a split-second decision involving an armed individual and a father who believed his son was in danger. So, at this point, I'm going to bring in attorney Silva Megerditchian, and her channel, by the way, is the Law Lounge with Silva. I love it. I'm a subscriber, so she puts out really great shorts. You'll learn a lot about the law, and definitely subscribe to that show, and also subscribe to my show. Press the like button if you like it, and put on notifications because I oftentimes will decide I'm doing a show the day of, and then I have to get it together. So I haven't decided when I'm going to do it. But right now, I'm going to add Silva to the stage here. Whoops, that's not Silva, but I will get her. Hold on one moment. Gosh, I will get Silva. That is, by the way, my slideshow presentation. And put the glasses on so I can get Silva here. Oh, gee, where is Silva? Well, we'll have to wait for one moment because I don't see her right now. So she must have gotten somehow disconnected. And let's see. Oh, there she is. All right,
There I
there's
am.
Silva. Hi, Silva. I didn't see you
Hi.
in my thing. It must have been on my end here, but I'm going to put both of us up. There we go. And the tech stuff is better. All right. So Silva, thanks for joining me.
Oh, what a great open, Margaret, and always a pleasure. I love your show, and again, I just adore the intelligence. So thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And people really enjoyed us together. We have a former prosecutor and a defense attorney, and it really works. And two
Yes.
people from different coasts. I'm East Coast Boston, and you're out in LA. I love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I got such great reaction. And it's true, Margaret. I think we can talk about cases in a neutral fashion. And I think that's really important so people understand what it's like to actually argue these cases and what it takes. And this case, oh my gosh, there's just so much. And I was floored with the verdict. Floored.
Yep. Why were you floored?
Two main reasons, Margaret, and you said it beautifully. Chase, 130 yards, and the third actual issue in the back. We know when we practice defense law that self-defense, it's not open to everyone to argue, right? The
Right.
fact of the matter is you have to be in reasonable fear. And we always tell clients, you never shoot someone in the back and you never chase after them. And that's the issue of this case that I thought was a no-brainer. The fact that the child was chased, the fact that he was shot in the back, the fact that the witnesses came out and actually corroborated the fact that the child was running. I just thought it was a no-brainer, but I do think the key mistake in this case was the prosecution went all or none. They said, we're
Yeah.
charging murder, not manslaughter, not negligence, nothing. We want full-on murder. And for anyone out there that's been a victim of a violent crime or any kind of crime, or who owns their own business, I don't think the prosecution gave enough credence to how self-defense in this country is treated as a right. And the other issue I think that we're going to discuss, I know, is believe rightfully 14-year-olds should not have guns. And I think that's also what stuck on in the jury's mind, that this was a 14-year-old child with a real gun that was usable with bullets in it. And I think that has a definitive effect on their verdict. So there's so much, but I really did think, Margaret, Chase, shot in the back, guilty.
Yeah. And
It's
the
incredible.
expert, I thought they did a nice job with the prosecution did a nice job with their expert showing they had that a red dot on the expert's back
Yeah,
and or somebody's back and
yeah,
showing exactly how that poor child was shot. I thought, excellent.
yeah.
You couldn't do no more with the expert, right?
The prosecution did a really strong job, but I think in this case, the defense, they really capitalized on the philosophical argument of the importance of protecting yourself or someone else. And they did it in a way I thought that was so conversational. They brought it a personalized argument that I thought truly was just brilliant. It
Yeah.
was the way a defense attorney, I would show that closing argument to young defense attorneys that want to argue successfully. It was beautifully done.
I would too. And when I taught law at Boston College for 17 years and then stopped shortly after COVID. But I would show that to my law students because he was
Yes.
brilliant. And in fact, I have it right here. So what I thought I'd do, I even liked the very beginning. And I'll tell you why, because first of all, as a prosecutor, you get a case, you come up with a theme, and in your opening statement and closing argument, you're embellishing on that theme. You're telling a story. Is that what you do?
Absolutely. You know, the key, we were always told when I was a public defender, I was trained, and they in LA County, and they threw us into the lion's den. We were trained, the prosecutors have the law, you have the story. Tell the story. And the second point was you don't read your notes. because a
Yeah.
jury can't relate to you when there's a notebook in your face. And it stuck to me. And it was, we always say KISS, right? In the defense and prosecutorial world. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't overcomplicate your case. Tell the story, the emotion, and what your client was going through at the time of the incident, because that is what connects us as humans. And that's what this defense attorney did brilliantly,
Yeah.
along with treating the prosecutor's case. I mean, when he said that the prosecutor put a bottle of water on that screen, and if you think this case is about that, then your work is done. Find this man guilty. I thought, oh my God, what a risk.
Oh,
What
yeah.
a brilliant risk. That was just brilliance.
It was. And talking about notes, I'll never forget this. When I was in law school, I had a famous lawyer who actually taught the class, and it was called trial practice, third year, I believe. So I had my yellow legal pad, and I'm standing out there giving, I don't know what I was doing, opening statements, something like that. So I had my legal pad. He ran out into the middle, he grabbed my legal pad, and then I was stuck there without notes. And I'll never forget that, but never again.
You know what else? It's like it's the connection. When you look your jurors in the eyes, you naturally want to trust that attorney. And it opens you up to saying, listen to me. Don't fall asleep. Don't roll your eyes. Don't look somewhere else. The juror is forced to look at you. And by looking at you, they pay more attention. And I tell people all the time, and attorneys I train, listen, we can't connect with someone for 4 hours. Like, do the best you can and try to minimize your statement and keep it within a short amount of time, even if it's a murder, because people's minds, they go other places, or make it interesting for them. Oh my gosh, Margaret, when that defense attorney
I'm going to
sat
play
in,
it. Yeah.
oh yeah, but when he sat in the witness stand, I was like, oh my God, he's sitting where the witnesses sit. But it was
Yeah.
brilliance, brilliance.
Here we go. And I really do think, I mean, I don't know. This is one of the, I think that his oration is what ultimately turned the case.
Because you wanted to listen, Margaret. We were hinging on his words, and there's a reason. It was said with conviction. It was said with honor. And that's hard when you're a juror to stray from that, especially when you're dealing with a case. Would anyone have been shot had there not been a gun? And I think that's the issue that I think really stuck in the jurors' minds. But yes, go ahead, Margaret, play
Yes,
it.
so
I've been
I'm going to
delaying
play
you.
it, and then I'm going to stop it too so we can talk
Yes.
about it. And I'm going to really play it from the beginning. So let's see. I am going to get it up here.
Margaret, you and I
This is
share
it.
the fact that we can't control our computers. I'm the same way.
Yeah, I know. Let's.
Date myself a little bit, that we would actually listen to radio shows. And one of the radio shows that we would listen to quite often is a guy named Paul Harvey. And what he would do is he would tell stories. And in telling stories, what he would do is tell a story that he thought that everybody actually knew. He would tell a story and he would give details of a story that he thought that everybody actually knew already. And he would tell it, and he would tell it in his interesting way, but what he would do is intentionally leave out parts of the story so that people would be a little confused, because they'd heard the part of the story that they thought that they knew, but he would leave parts out. And then he would take this huge pause after he was done and everybody think it was over, and then he would say this famous line. He would say, and now it's time for the rest of the story. And then he would spend the rest of the show telling the listener the rest of the story that they did not know. He would do this because he understood people. He understood that we are a generation of people who simply listen to headlines, listen to flashy things, and don't hear the rest of the story. He understood that if he could tell just small parts of the story in the way that people thought that they understood them and didn't hear the rest of the story, then they would believe things one certain way. And the way that he did it was fascinating. It was interesting. People started to understand that that's the way we have to start listening. Because if we only hear part of the story, then we can never get to the truth. And so as we sit here and get ready for our closing argument, all we're going to do now is tell you the rest of the story. I will tell you wholeheartedly, and this might come across as a shock, I agree with some of the stuff that the state of South Carolina said. When they got done with their closing argument, folks next to me said, "Do you want to take that dollar down?" And I said, "No." Because let me tell you with unabashed honesty, they are 1,000% right about the following statement. If Rick Chow executed a human being over a $1 bottle of water, enjoy hell. Let's make that clear. If Rick Chow shot a man in the back stealing $1 bottle of water from his store, you do what you will. Because there's nothing to justify this back and forth. Was he right? Was he wrong? It doesn't matter. Taking a human life over a bottle of water is absolutely ridiculous. It's wrong under any way that you could possibly look at it. And that's why the state has gone out of their way to put this $1 bottle of water up, to put this picture up, because they want you to believe that this is what this case is about. The rest of the story. It has nothing to do with this water. It doesn't. Because if that was what it was about, this wouldn't be a complicated case. As we sit in front of you, the things that we have to talk about is we have to break down everything that we have watched in this case. And we need to break down what the state of South Carolina has presented to you. And as we break it down, we can break it down inside of 3 classifications, what they've put on the stand. They put on what they call eyewitnesses. They put on investigators. And they put on experts. You remember? Those are the 3 things that they have given us. So first, let's talk about the eyewitnesses. And the reason I want to talk about the eyewitnesses first is, remember, and I wrote down a quote that the state said, "Cameras don't lie. For 17 seconds, you could have played the camera. For 17 minutes, you could have played these cameras." If you remember, these witnesses got on the stand, they sat in front of you, and I asked them questions. They looked directly at you. They were talking about what they remembered. They were talking about their memories and how important that is. And then I started asking them questions from right there. You remember? I said, "No, I'm not trying to be rude, but I remember you talking to 911. Do you remember that?" "Yeah." "And you said something different to the 911 tape that you're saying right here today." I asked another person, "Isn't it true that we don't interview witnesses together because they can get their stories together and their brains could get something that didn't really happen?" "Yeah." "And that's on video, correct?" Cameras don't lie. "And they called 911, and in the 911 call, they said they didn't see anything, correct?" Cameras don't lie. "But don't you remember," and I asked one of the witnesses, "isn't it true that you told them something and they said that was completely impossible?" "Well, yeah." "And then they've met with you, they've talked to you, they've interviewed you and put you on the stand and you told something different." Cameras don't lie. So why are we sitting here and not watching those videos? Why didn't the state give you the 911 calls? Why didn't they give you the videos? Why didn't they give you the information? If cameras don't lie. The rest of the story. I talked to one of the investigators and officers as he took the stand. Remember, we asked him, what is important as an investigator? It's important to get the facts. It's important to get the information. It's important to get the evidence as close to the incident as possible. So we can do what? Remember the question I asked him? So we can give all the information to your jury. The rest of the story.
So what do you think so far? I'm going to play more of it, but
Yeah.
I love how he started. I'm going to tell you the rest of the story, and I love the way he started it with some radio show that he used to listen to with his dad, because it showed that he's human, and I think that connected with jurors right away. And yes, he sat in the witness chair. What do you think?
Brilliance. First of all, Margaret, I just want to say, look, no child deserves what happened
Yeah.
A 14-year-old should not be shot and killed. And I know, I just want to bring a little bit of that into this, because I know as we discuss it, it's wonderful to discuss this and break this down. But at the end of the day, this young boy should have never been killed. He
I
should have
agree.
also never had a gun. This is a learning point for a lot of my clients. I have a young client who, we are able to get him home on probation. He's 15 when he tried to rob a homeowner had a gun, and the kid was caught running away. The homeowner did not shoot him as he was running away, but he has his life, and he got therapy, and he's on the right track. He has a chance to redeem himself, unlike this 14-year-old.
I know.
But dealing with this attorney, I wrote down, when you hear part of the story, you never get to the full truth. Brilliance.
Yeah, you can use that one in your defense.
Absolutely. And I have also used what he did. You say a statement, cameras don't lie. You say a statement, cameras don't lie. And if you don't have the footage, you say, do you wish you had the footage? Because if you do, that's reasonable doubt. And I think he played it insanely beautifully. And also, reminding jurors what they heard by sitting in the witness chair is a very powerful photo that the jury will take in the back room. And because you subliminally remember everything. This man teaches us as attorneys how simple it is to just talk to someone. When I was a beginning PD, my boss, when I was prepping for my first trial, he said, Silva, talk to me like you would talk to your cousin about this case. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, how would you explain your case to your cousin? Would you have notes in your hand, or would you just talk to me about the case? And when I talked to him about the case, he goes, there's your closing argument. And this is exactly what this obviously trained, brilliant defense attorney did. He was able to take a prosecutorial argument and turn it on its face. If you believe this is about a $1 bottle of water, finished.
Yeah.
This is trial advocacy at its best.
I think so too. And you'll see, I'm going to play a lot more of it. And you'll see that toward the end, he says something like, the fact that a 14-year-old boy died, I hate that. And the fact that there was a gun involved, I hate that. So he really tried to show he's as upset about the death of poor Cyrus, more than, as much as anybody else. And
Margaret,
that is what is such a tragedy. I mean, I'm a mother of 3. I just can't imagine.
It's funny. We as defense attorneys, we take what we can get, and we try to explain, look, you could hate us because a lot of people, what we do, they really hate. These are the cases where we show we have to do our job, but we can acknowledge the tragedy. We have to face it and not turn our backs to it. We cannot ignore that a 14-year-old lost his life for nothing. If he just went to school, did what he had to do as a normal child would. But tragically, he doesn't have that life, and his parents will never see him grow. But at the same time, I always warn my clients, the younger they are, everything you do has a direct effect. Carrying a loaded weapon, a fake gun that could be seen as real, a knife. People's first reaction is to protect themselves. And a lot of times, when you have a minority client, the jury, regardless of their makeup, will jump to a conclusion. Another Black boy with a gun. There's already a subliminal thought of, you see gang member, you see bad kid, bad family. The subliminal thoughts are what comes up in a jury of, the first thought isn't tragically he lost his life. The first thought becomes, why does the 14-year-old have a gun? So it's just philosophically, this case on so many levels, it can be broken down in a million different ways. It's insane.
I know it. And we talked about this before the show. What's the breakdown of the jury?
So we had 3 Black men, we had 2 Black women. So 5 out of the 12 were African American. And I think that also is really important, that this wasn't an all-white jury. This was a jury of, African American adults who were on that jury to hear this case. I think it's really, really important. And it was a unanimous decision. And it's obvious they spoke for a very long time, over 8 hours. It just says a lot. It was a unanimous decision. Again, I don't know. I think, again, I think if the prosecution maybe went a little bit less, as we say, balls to the wall with just a murder charge, and maybe did something as a manslaughter, they would have had a shot. I don't think this jury wanted to convict this man. But something interesting, Margaret, too, and I don't know if you heard this, but Mr. Chow had actually pulled his gun before. He had pulled his gun for another young person who had come to the store and burglarized or robbed. And then a suspect who was fleeing in a car, he shot at the car. Now, that evidence was not allowed in the trial. And I wonder if that was allowed, would the jury had said, this guy is far more aggressive than a normal, someone trying to protect his rights. He was almost like a vigilante and not in a good way. I wonder if that came in.
If I'm the judge, I wouldn't allow it either. It's too prejudicial.
Absolutely. I mean, that would have been a 5-minute guilty for sure. But the judge definitely made the right ruling. But it shows you that pre-motion exclusion of evidence can have a real effect on a trial.
Yes. And that was a big one. Now, what about the fact that this was in South Carolina? Would there be a different outcome in California, do you think? Even with the same attorney?
You know what? I don't know. And I'll tell you why. In California, as I've done so many jury trials, and I had a self-defense trial that came out to be not guilty as well, there is one thing that binds us all. We all understand what it's like to be a victim. Now, not necessarily a victim, let's say, of gun violence or robbery, but we all, regardless of South Carolina, New Hampshire, California, Texas, anywhere, there is an innate understanding of fear. And nobody wants to feel fear, whether it's from a child or from an adult. And I think that's the key to self-defense cases, making the jury understand that when your control is taken away and you feel that uncontrollable amount of fear that your life can be terminated by something so randomly stupid like burglary, robbery, something of that nature, our core right is to protect ourselves and our safety. And I think that's something in California. I know we get the rap of being a liberal state. Remember, we're the home of three strikes. We were the ones that had life in prison for a low-level felony case for the third time. We believe in self-defense. We believe in the right to feel safe. You ask anybody on the street and they'll say the same thing. So I'm going to go out on a limb, Margaret. I actually think the way this case was done, the way this defense attorney handled this, the way that the prosecution only asked for a murder conviction, I think it would have been a not guilty here too. I do, or at least a hang. I never thought not guilty. I thought maybe a hang because of the power of self-defense cases. And I think that would have happened here too.
And another thing, it's not illegal to chase somebody out of your store.
Fair, but we have a very tough time getting verdicts of not guilty when the victim chases, and honestly, 130 yards. Margaret, he wasn't chasing him out of the store. He was chasing him out of the city, it felt like.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's a difference between get the hell out of my home or get the hell out of my store, and I'm going to chase you farther than a football field. I think that's the difference.
And I also think if he hadn't chased him further than a football field, the boy would still be alive. Chase him maybe 50 yards and then go back. But the fact that he kept pursuing, that's probably what the jury talked about so much. But this defense attorney did a great job showing talking about self-defense of others. So they chased him, but then the son said he has a gun, and the father believed that the son was going to be shot and therefore shot the boy in the back. So, but if he had stopped chasing him, if he hadn't run out of the store, that's what the prosecution said, this kid would be alive today.
I don't think there's any doubt. And what's interesting, again, what the defense attorney did brilliantly, if trials are pictures, if your closing argument is a film, he said, stop the film right when that chase ended. It's not about the chase, what happened before. It's about what made him shoot. And I think that focus won him the case as well. But you're absolutely right. If Mr. Chow and his son turned back, this 14-year-old wouldn't be dead. And then the argument becomes, I wonder what would have happened to the 14-year-old with an active gun. Would someone have been hurt? Would he have been killed? Would he have been caught by police and shot by police? But that becomes irrelevant, right? It's really...
He could have been stopped by police. Then he could have gone into, maybe some detention or whatever they do there in South Carolina, a few years. Maybe he could have come out a citizen, and he could have gotten a job and had a family. So it could have gone so many ways, and it's just tragic. I think that's why people are so upset.
Margaret, when there is court intervention, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, but I will be honest, as a juvenile defense attorney, 50% of my cases are juvie cases. I've seen the system turn lives around. Whenever there is therapy and there's help. I just did a short about ADHD. 60% of children in custody and detained in California actually have a diagnosis of ADHD. They don't have that control of their behavior, that impulse control. And rather than treat it, we sometimes tend to punish it first, treat it later. But the treatment is key because it prevents future behavior that could possibly get them killed. I don't think this 14-year-old ever thought this gun was going to get him killed. And it looks like he wasn't even the one that stole the bottles in the first place.
No, I don't think he stole anything. I don't know. They always said $1 bottle. What if it was 10 bottles or one bottle, he still got shot and killed, and it's just such a tragedy. I also think, to your point, when you're from age, say, 12 until, I would say, maybe 27 or 28, you're in that period where you're making bad decisions. And if you can get out, and whether you're from the inner city or wherever you may live, you may have some mental health issues, but those years are when people struggle. And then some of them do come out on the other side and live productive lives and are happy, but it's such a shame. I think you do have to give kids a chance.
The frontal lobe, it's exactly what you said. They don't have the fully formed frontal lobe. And you look at so many celebrities like Jelly Roll, who had so much trouble as a child, and the system changed him. Change happens. And I've seen it in my career over and over and over again. But this is the tragedy. This 14-year-old, he'll never have that change. He'll never have the therapy that will affect the decisions. It's funny, I always say a child is so reactionary. I had a client who said, Silva, I never intended to use the gun. I just had it. Why?
Right.
Why? And he could not explain it. But again, he was another child with hyperactivity who got the gun first and thought about it later. And once I explained to him how people's reaction with fear is they protect themselves first, ask questions later, he goes, oh my God, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, I could be dead right now.
Amen, Margaret. And as a prosecutor, you see it all the time too.
Yeah, I was in the juvenile system for a long time as a prosecutor. So I really didn't, I was of the mindset, I was young at the time, and I was in charge of the gang unit, at the juvenile gang unit and all that. We were in Lawrence, which was a very tough area of Massachusetts. So but I was young, and I wanted to win my cases, and we had a very liberal judge who kept letting them off. But now as a parent, and now that I'm older, I agree with that judge, because there were programs, and I do believe some of those kids got a second chance, or maybe a third chance, fourth chance, but hopefully some of them came out on the other end. So I do have a heart. I think it takes a lot of life to understand that. And being a parent, and also being a parent, I've had to deal with some mental illness, and with
Yes.
one of my children, and it was, it was hard, but I have to say, so far she's come out on the other end, and so it just changes your life. Some of these life things that you go through.
Margaret, I think that's why the perspective is so innate. I think everybody who's listening who knows someone with mental health struggles, it is gut-wrenching, because until you find the right way to treat, that path of getting there it's gut-wrenching.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see the medication that makes the child worse, or the therapist that they don't relate to. But once you get proper treatment, it's a 180 in so many different
is.
ways.
Yeah.
So change can happen, but you need the proper tools to get there. And as
Exactly.
we've said in our last broadcast, Margaret, you need the research to properly treat mental illness, which I think is one of the ways to prevent crime. If we can treat, we can prevent. If we ignore, we exacerbate. And so I
Exactly.
think that's really the issue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. And we don't really know what was going on with this poor 14-year-old, what his
Yes.
upbringing was, and did he have some issues? I don't know, but
We don't know.
we
Yeah.
didn't.
And we'll
He
never
doesn't have
know.
a child. We'll never know. We'll never
Yeah.
know. But all right, so I'm going to go back to playing a little bit more of this, because there's some stuff that I think was also brilliantly done. And again, I don't want people to think that I'm not upset about this horrible death,
Of
because I
course.
really, really am. I just want to see what he did to convince these jurors. So we will go back to having him talk again, and then I'll forward it a little bit.
Because what we don't want to do is subject and put our emotions in there, our personal beliefs, our subjective decisions. That's what's happened.
Yeah.
The rest of the story. For some reason, the state of South Carolina doesn't want to give it to you. One of the witnesses took the stand, if you remember correctly. Detective English took the stand. You remember? One of the first ones they put on. And they put the videos up on all of these screens, all this technology that the state of South Carolina has. And they put up all of it. And one of the clips they put up was of Rick Chow's statement. You remember? And they played it, and it said, "My son saw, I didn't initially see my son that he had a gun, so when I looked at his hand," and then what did that officer do? He just walked away. We knew there was a second part of the video. Cameras don't lie. It would have taken, how long was the quote? 17 seconds to play it. Cameras don't lie. And what was the next question from the state of South Carolina? Isn't it true he didn't tell you on that scene blank? Cameras don't lie. So we literally had to make sure you knew the rest of the story. And what did we do to tell you the rest of the story? We brought that other officer on to tell the rest of the story. And you remember, it went right together. The rest of that statement. "My son saw, I didn't see it initially. My son alerted me that he had a gun. So when I'm going to go talk to his son," that's when he walked away. And then the statement kept going. "Look at his hand. He actually had a handgun in his hand." The rest of the story. "He got up running, then my son yelled, 'He's got a gun.' So when I watched, there was a gun in his hand." That would be some important information for the state of South Carolina to tell you. But they need it to be about $1. They need to scare you. They need to make you afraid. They need you to think the great Rick Chow, this evil human being over here, killed a man over $1. And that is disgusting. That is awful. That is abhorrent. But that's not what happened. The rest of the story. We don't want to tell you the rest of the story, because if you hear it, then you get to make an intelligent decision, and we don't want you to make an intelligent decision. We don't want you to hear the 911 calls. We don't want you to watch the videos. We don't want you to hear what Rick said at that moment, at that time, without a lawyer, without anyone telling him what to say or do. We had to play those for you. The rest of the story. And as we get in there and we listen to this and we go through all of this information, it becomes incredibly important. We then had investigators take a stand. You remember the questions I asked of the investigators and why they were so important. the state of South Carolina, for you to make a decision, has come in front of you and said, what witnesses on the stand? Guns aren't that bad. 14-year-old kids have guns all the time. And they have witnesses literally with their hands on the Bible looking at you, talking about, guns are prevalent, it's not that big of a deal. That was the testimony. I didn't make that up. That was the testimony that they submitted. Do I think they believe any part of that? Not a line of that. But they have emotion. They're upset. And they want you to believe it's about a bottle of water. It's not the rest of the story. And then there was an expert who took the stand. Do you remember? I asked her a very directly question. I had her sit right here. She stood in front of you as if she was Rick Chow. And I showed her what we said Mr. Belton could have been doing. And what did she say? Yeah, that's possible. The rest of the story. She described the bullet path, back to front, right to left, slightly upward. The rest of the story. We got to avoid all of that because that changes our narrative. So now we go into what they did present. And let's talk about the part of the case that we're all wondering about, the thing that everybody's there, and if it's in your gut, it should be in everybody's gut. And they spent their entire case. Their case was a day and a half, and most of it they spent it on one part. The chase. The chase. The chase. They shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have done it. You remember one of the witnesses, the investigator, got on the stand, and I had to ask him the question, is there anything illegal about that? No, sir.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what they're talking about. Well, common sense. We don't want you to do it. But it's not illegal. That's an important distinction to know. This is a store. The testimony was they've owned it for 11 years. Margins are small. You've seen the wall of shame. People have shoplifted. People have stolen. Chased them. I've been stolen from. I chased the people to Georgia, flat out.
That was
It's
a good
their
one.
property. They're emotional about it. And that's why he ran after her. The question isn't, do you think it's right? The question is it legal? And then you go to the second part of it's illegal. If it was illegal, don't you remember Andy Chow sat up there on the stand? And Mr. Scott got right in his face, and he was yelling at him, and he was going angry with him, and he was saying everything to him. But the one thing he didn't say to him is, and you have been charged with following this young man out of the store. And you are criminally liable for following this young man out of the store. Because he's not. He's not liable. He's not criminally liable. He has not been charged. And he did not do anything wrong. But when you Monday morning quarterback and come back and look at the situation and say, well, why? You know what? They could have done this. They could have done this. They could have done this. Because that's what the state's case is. Think about it. How many times did you hear throughout the course of this trial the great state of South Carolina say the following sentence? They could have done this. 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 They don't have evidence to offer, but they have fear, passion, emotion, and they want to get that out of you. They want that fear, passion, and emotion, and for you to ignore the law. We do not get to take the law the way that we want it to be. We take the law the way that it is. Let me say that again. We don't get to take the way that we want it to be. The solicitor can't say, well, I want it to be illegal for a shopkeeper to go out of the store. Shopkeepers should not be able to follow somebody. That's what I want. Andy, that's what I want. That's not the law. And then there's one last part that he, for some reason, has ignored. Let's say one of you, just one of you for argument's sake, are sitting back there and you say, you know what? I think they are at fault in bringing on the difficulty. It may not be legal, it may not be illegal, but I just don't like the fact that they follow him for 130 yards. I do not like the 130 yards. I do not like the 130 yards.
That's what
Well,
we
the
were
judge is gonna
talking
charge
about.
you on something on the law,
Exactly.
and it's called withdrawal. Let me explain that concept to you. Let's say one of you start a fight. Let's say I start a fight with Mr. Scott. And let's say I go up to him and I say, I'm going to get you. I'm going to take you down. I'm going to hurt you. And I start the fight and I come at him. And I'm about to hurt him. And then all of a sudden I said, you know what? This is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. And I turn around and I'm like, I'm over it. And Mr. Scott brings a knife and comes out. Well, according to their theory, I gotta let him stab me. According
That's
to
a
their
good one.
theory, I gotta let him hurt me, even though that I have withdrawn. Well, that is the law of withdrawal. If an individual says, if they withdraw by words or actions, their right to self-defense is back on the line. The rest.
I'm going to fast forward this just a little
Don't
bit
take my word for
to
it.
show where he throws himself on the ground.
Yes, I can. I want,
and then-
absolutely epic.
You know, and then we'll hear at the very end where he drives his point home.
And Margaret, the fact that he made the prosecution not seem transparent, brilliant.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
hiding the facts from you. They don't want you to hear or see it. Brilliance.
I know.
Brilliance.
I think it's right here. Maybe not. Oh, yep. Okay, we got to watch this part. I've never
Yes.
seen this happen in a courtroom. Have you? Well, you'll
Oh,
wait.
come on.
Here we go.
Everyone throws themselves on the floor.
And you have the right to be wrong. He's gonna tell you that. They just told you. He was running, he fell down, and he picked up a firearm. All this stuff, all this back and forth, he 100% from the state's mouth, he picked up that firearm. You have a right to be wrong. You have a right to act on appearances. And that's what the judge is going to tell you the law is. And that's from the state. I want you to think about that again.
There you go.
Gets up.
Yeah.
Medical examiner, shot, back, angle, pointed. Right to act on appearances. Rest of the story. Or take it another situation. What makes sense? Maybe the light's on the fire. And then as he's running, when he falls, that's when it comes off. We don't know. Because the burden of proof is on the state to prove what happened in that situation. And they've just admitted the one thing we know for a fact is he picked up the firearm. That's from them, not from me. That was their admission. And then as he picks up the firearm, then we have to go with Andy's testimony. And he's right. If you don't believe what Andy says, if you think Andy is 100% a liar, you can stop right now. Andy's lying. He made it up. This is completely not true. The gun was never pointed at him. He never saw this silver barrel that he only would have seen after he saw discovery. He never saw it. And then let's take that one step further. Not only that you must believe that he is a liar, you must believe that Rick Chow is the most creative, smartest person in the history of the world. He is clairvoyant, if you will. Let's give him an Oscar. Rick Chow was able to decide, you know what, I'm going to kill this boy. I need to figure out when he's going to come into the store, when he's going to have a gun, when it's going to be in his pouch. I need to make sure that Andy sees it. And then I need to make sure Andy follows him for the direction. So I need to make sure Andy calls 911 and says exactly what I want him to say. I need to make sure Andy says the exact thing that I'm going to say exact time.
Andy's the son.
That's what it would be necessary to believe the state of South Carolina's case. That Rick Chow set all this up in motion to execute a shoplifter. The people he decides, needs, has to help him make a living. It doesn't make any sense. And if we take this one step further from the state's theory, Rick Chow is so pissed off, so damn angry about this shoplifter, hates him so much that he executes him. Why not shoot him when he gets out of the store?
That's a good point.
Gun's already on his hip. Why not walk out of the store? Shoplifter, $1, he stole, shot. Shoplifter, 10 yards, shot. Shoplifter, 20 yards, shot. 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110. Why wait 130? Unless something changed.
Great point.
What changed was somebody pulling a gun and pointing it directly at his son. That's what changed. If he wanted to execute Cyrus, he could have done it right outside of that store. But we have to ignore that because that would be part of the rest of the story. Use your common sense and listen to the evidence, but listen to the witnesses and listen to what they've told you. Murder, as the state has told you, is the intentional killing of another human being with malice aforethought, without self-defense. We have just showed you self-defense and defense of others. The state has melded a little bit of those theories together, but you need to make sure that you understand, one, without fault and bringing on the difficulty. Again, I've explained to you that you have a legal right to follow somebody. Whether they like what the law is, that's what it is. And as you're going through that, then you have to talk about imminent danger. And this is from the eyes of Andy. And they're trying to mix the two of the things together, but it's under the eyes of Andy at this point. As Andy, does he have a fear of imminent danger? Was a gun pointed at Andy? Would Andy, who had withdrawn from the conflict, you got it, I'm over this, no. Would Andy have had a right to point the firearm and save his own life? Reasonable person. A reasonable person in the same situation, what would they have done? And we can take that two ways if we want to argue the state's theory. Way one, Andy, gun pointed at you. Would he have had a right, as he rescinds, remember that knife in the back situation? Andy would have had a right to fire to save his own life. But more importantly, the reasonable person's situation, Rick Chow would have had a right, and did have a right, to save his son. The strongest evidence that was given in entire this case is when the officer got on the stand and I asked him that question. And I said, have you ever fired your firearm? No. Have you had a firearm pointed at you? Yes.
You know, I think he made an important point there about a parent wanting to save his son.
And, you know, it also shows how the jury found his argument definitely thought-provoking, because one of the first questions the jurors asked when deliberating was about malice.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the murder charge. You have to find malice. And I think that, again, it's taking incredibly complicated legal terminology, Margaret, and really making it simplistic, the everyman's definitions and language. And I think that's what the jury grabbed onto. Just brilliance in every capacity, and an orator at that, in that you can't turn away from him. And he's making sure the jury stays awake. Trust me, Margaret, we've all had a juror who dozes off. All of us. I don't care how good they are, but he is making sure that everyone stays awake and listens.
Yeah. Clapping. Do you think he went overboard?
No.
Yelling and clapping? Yeah.
You know, I think when you have a case like this with a 14-year-old who lost his life and a store owner, the natural stereotypes that are also involved, you have to take it to a level that shows the jury it matters, that everything matters, but you have to follow the law and follow common sense. And what's incredible is how he outlined the common sense argument.
Yeah.
If it was about the bottle of water, then why not shoot him earlier? Brilliant. Mm-hmm. So again, this is something that I think makes us all realize the power of the words we use, and also the simplicity of the argument, because the law can always be taken down to its simplistic common sense values. And that's what I think he showed.
I agree. And he also really doesn't have, it might seem long on this show, but it's not really truly a very long closing argument.
And it doesn't need to be.
No.
I think someone who wasn't as experienced, or someone who wrote notes, who was reading their notes, I think they would have actually made it very long. I think he did what he had to do to show reasonable doubt and to show that the prosecution couldn't prove their case. And again, Margaret, he had such an advantage in this case because the DA essentially fell on the sword of only charging murder. And that gives you a lot of leeway in your argument. And he did a beautiful job.
I think district attorneys will think twice, because we've seen a lot of overcharging lately. Look at the Karen Reed case.
Karen Reed, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if there's any case that really messed up with overcharging, it was Karen Reed. And the jury did a brilliant job with that as well. The defense got an advantage of that. They have to be more understanding of core values of the public and give them a choice. I think that's the key. And he, again, he's a store owner. Would he have shot anybody if he wasn't a victim also of consistent crime. And I think, again, the defense attorney made that very clear. Margins are small, and he was a victim over and over again. Common sense argument, human argument.
Absolutely. And let's just see how I'll go forward a little bit just to see how he ends it. I thought that was good too. Hold on
Yeah.
one second. Let's see, maybe right here where his arms are up. Let's see. I think it's almost over.
The judge is going to tell you, as I mentioned, as we're talking about self-defense, and I've said it several times, you have a right to act on appearances, and you have a right to be wrong. So as we sit here and we're in Rick Chow's position, we're wondering what Rick Chow is doing. As we've heard this testimony, Rick Chow sees a gun pointed at his son. His son says, as you heard, I was afraid, I was terrified. He's got a gun, he's got a gun. So Rick Chow in that situation stands in the place of his son. This case is not about a dollar. This case is not about a shoplifter. This case is about a father who sees a gun pointed at his son and had to make a decision. I hate it. I do. I hate that a young man lost his life. I disagree with the state's theory on it's not that big of a deal that kids are going around with guns. I hate it. It is a problem. And it is a problem in this case. I hate that we have sat here and tried to make this about something it's not. I've listened to the state of South Carolina's opening statement talk about Cyrus's age, his future, and I understand all of that. I do. The one thing that does not know Cyrus's age is that gun. The gun doesn't know how old it is. And when a gun is pointed at somebody, you have an option. As we sit here and talk about this case and how important the details are, that if you step back and look at something one way, it's completely different. And as you get closer and you look at it more and you look at all of the details, you'll never see it differently again. And so what I'm asking you to do is focus on the details. I wear this suit all the time in trials. People say, oh, you always dress so flashy, but you're not flashy. I wear this suit all the time because it reminds me that details are the most important thing that can happen. It actually has my name and the pinstripes in it, because when you look at it, after realizing it's not just a pinstripe suit, it actually has my name just right down the middle. And I look at it and it reminds me in cases that if you don't take your step back and look at things in full detail, you will miss it, like the state of South Carolina has, and they want you to miss it. We have to focus on important matters. We have to see the full story. You have to ask yourself the question, why don't they want me to know the full story? And then finally, for the state's case to make any sense whatsoever, we have to go back to our withdrawal situation. For the state's case to make any sense whatsoever, you must be comfortable with their theory in that Andy Chow is in the store. Andy Chow runs out of that store. Andy Chow runs out of that store after Cyrus. And as he's running out after the person he thinks is shoplifted, Cyrus still points the firearm. Andy still has his hands up. His dad is still watching, and his dad says, no, I'm not going to do anything. And Cyrus shoots and kills his son. The state wants us to believe that that's legal, and that's okay. That storekeeper should let people take stuff out of their store, and if you follow them and you get killed, it's okay. It's not. Now, do you know the rest of the story?
That was like interesting how he ended that I can take this off. Got the lawyer you know on here. He's one of my
What's
favorites.
up, everybody?
Whoops, I got to get rid of him.
Back
Come
in.
on.
We're getting started
Oh,
on this
no.
Alec Baldwin trial. They're picking a jury right now.
All right,
But
one
before
second.
we even get to jury selection,
All right.
Yep.
He's one of my YouTube people that I enjoy listening to. So let me just get rid of him. Get back to us. There we are.
Yes.
So I loved how we ended with, there's the rest of the story, and he just walked away.
Yeah. The theme. You always, again, another thing that the PD's office taught me was you always have a theme, and that theme guides you when you're open. That theme guides you in your cross-examination, and that theme closes out your close. And again, cameras don't lie. And going back to when you hear part of the story, you never get the truth. The roles changed, where the defense attorney became the transparent one, and the prosecutor became the one that hid the story. Again, akin to the Karen Reed case. If you really look at the similarities, when you demonize the prosecutors, look, they'll do whatever they can to get this woman in custody. And you look at this case, they'll do whatever they can to get Mr. Chow in custody. It makes it unbelievably understandable that the defense attorney is actually the one doing the right thing. So, and he took another controversial issue on its head.
Yeah.
The 14-year-old with the gun. Beautifully done, respectful. It's just beautiful, honestly.
I thought he was very respectful, and he really said it from the heart. The fact that a 14-year-old died, I hate it. I hate it. And you felt that. And it would be very hard to defend a case like this. I'd have a hard time with it. But he put emotions aside and focused on the law.
And Margaret, when they read the verdict, the one thing that always sticks in my mind is the victim's reactions,
So
the victim's
sad.
family, the mother. I mean, it's horrific because she did not get justice for her son's killing, right? But the problem also is, she'll never have her young son back. And, people are really hard on the fact that, well, what mother would let their son have a gun? I tell you, I represent parents who do everything right. And the child will do something or have something within their custody, and the parents have no idea. Let's not demonize. Let's try to understand and, again, prevent a tragedy like this from happening in the future. It's just unbelievable. But it also, just taking it apart, Margaret, just from the two attorneys talking, there's one other aspect I loved. He changed also the tone. This isn't just about a 14-year-old who tragically lost his life. It's about a father who would do anything to save his own son's life.
You're right.
And brilliance. It just makes you go back to why we're all here on this earth, to protect ourselves, to protect our families, to protect each other. There's not one thing I thought he did incorrectly or wrong. There's nothing.
I know. I agree. And what I would like to do, and we don't have time tonight, but you and I had talked about discussing The Crash, the Netflix movie show that everybody's talking about. And I'd love to talk to you about that another time, because I have mixed feelings on the outcome of that.
I know what you're thinking.
So,
we gotta completely dissect it, my friend.
Yes, and that people watching this, that will be the hook for people to watch that. I've got to do a better job at scheduling so people can have their notifications and know when we're going to be on. But it's been such a pleasure. Can you think of anything else to say about the Chow case? I think we've dissected pretty much everything.
I think we have. And again, I just encourage everyone to just understand that, even the worst of criminals, sometimes if we just dissect it enough, we can really learn how to prevent victims, right? I just wish that we could just prevent crime. And I wouldn't mind losing my job if we just never had to do what we do. It's just a tragedy. So I appreciate you, Margaret. I love our discussions, and
too.
everyone stay safe out there, and We'll be back
Yes.
for I can't wait to dissect the crash.
Yes, so we'll schedule that. I would love to have us. We should do some sort of weekly thing. We'll have to talk about that, but it's such a pleasure having you on the show, and people commented how much they liked our dynamics. So I have to thank you so much for joining me, Silva.
Likewise, Margaret. Thank you for having me, and just thank you for the brilliance. And this is the thing. I think if prosecutors and defense attorneys can talk more, it would be awesome. So
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I appreciate you, Margaret. Take care. Stay safe, everyone.
Yes, and thank you everyone for watching The Margaret McLean Show.